Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chloe Lian, and I'm a senator on the Downtown Associated Student Council and ESL student at CCSF. Behalf of the Office of Student Activities and my council, I'm very excited to welcome you to our second Leadership Fireside Chat this semester. For those who are not familiar with this leadership development program, the purpose of this leadership checks is to equip CCSF students and student leaders with a wealth of leadership insight, tips, and strategies. We hope you will have a better understanding of leadership in action from a diverse group of effective and seasoned leaders across various industries. Before we introduce today's speaker, Dr. Becky Martinez, I'd like to share a few details about the program. First, those who attend 7 out of the 10 fireside chats during the academic year are eligible to receive a certificate of participation at a recognition event in the spring semester. Every section is open to all students. Even if you decide not to participate in the certificate part of the program. Since you have registered for today's section, thanks to June, we have a record of your attendance. Nothing further is needed on your end to mark your participation. Next, please note that these sections will be recorded. The links will be posted on CCSF Student Activities Office website for you to view later or to share with others so that they may benefit from this learning opportunity as well. If you have questions about this Leadership Fireside Chat program and the certificate of participation, please email student activities at ccsflive@mail.ccsf.edu. Next, I would also like to share a little bit regarding today's format. After these opening remarks, Geisce Ly, the Interim Vice Chancellor of Academic and Institutional Affairs, will interview today's speaker for about 15 minutes. If you have questions for Becky Martinez, please enter them in the chat directly to our Q&A facilitator. At around 5 p.m., there will be a question and answer opportunity for Becky to respond to your questions. During the last 10 minutes of our time together, we will invite you to share what you learned today that will help you in your leadership development journey. I'm now going to turn it over to Timon, who is going to share about our leadership program. Thank you.
Thank you, Chloe. Hi, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. My name is Timon Lu, and I'm a proud parent and ESL student at CCSF. I'm delighted to introduce today's speaker, Dr. Becky Martinez. Dr. Becky Martinez is a mixed race, mixed class woman of color, and has learned to hold the dynamic of the both, and because of these particular identities, she's a proud aunt, friend, forever learner, person that likes to run, student of nature, fan of ice cream, and hopes to always be in process. As a consultant and trainer, Becky strives to create space for critical reflection and learning to increase self-awareness and create sustainable change. Her work focuses on engaging individuals and groups to recognize systems of privilege and oppression for more inclusive and equitable policies, practice, norm, structures, and simply way of being. She works with a range of groups within higher education and with nonprofit organizations. She's a member with the Social Justice Training Institute, a co-lead facilitator for leadership, a foundation board member with the American College Personnel Association, a former certified trainer for the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network, and counselor advocate through Peace Over Violence. As a first-generation college student and former student affairs administrator, Becky deeply values higher education while recognizing the complexity it involves. Now, I would like to turn this over to Vice Chancellor Geisce Ly, who will be chatting with Becky about her leadership journey and experiences. Geisce, the floor is now yours.
Thank you, Timon. Appreciate it. And of course, thank you, Chloe, for kicking us off. For the folks on the call today, I am just super honored, super excited to have Dr. Becky Martinez joining us today. She is awesome. I've known her for 20 plus years. She is amazing. And just so, again, grateful and honored. Thank you, Dr. Becky Martinez, for joining us today, not just as a friend, but you are an educator. You are an inspirational role model. You are everything. And again, I think our students will learn a lot from you. And certainly, I just can't wait to sort of, ask you some questions. And of course, for you to inspire us, as you know, this is a great leadership program that we're providing for CCSF students. But again, I think the knowledge and tips and insights could be applicable in any, setting. So without further ado, again, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Be prepared to take notes. Lots of wisdom, pearls of wisdom will be coming out. And again, please certainly enjoy this Leadership Fireside Chat. And again, there will be opportunity for you to ask questions later as well. So Dr. Becky Martinez, thank you so much. Without saying any more, tell us about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Awesome. So I appreciate the invite. And I want to thank all of the students that are part of this process. We wouldn't be here without you. Also, big props to whoever put ice cream in the chat. So thank you for recognizing my love for ice cream. Dr. Becky Martinez, she, her, and hers. And it's a long journey. So how about I'll share a little bit of that. I was born and raised in Hemet, California, which is in Southern California. My family, like I come from a working class family of mostly physical laborers and some folks that sit at desk jobs. And I was like lucky enough to be able to pull off grades and get into school and want to go to college. I have a degree in biology that I do nothing with. And the reason that I have that degree is that ever since I was young, I wanted to be a doctor. When you grow up in a working class family, like the professions you know of are doctor, lawyer, teacher, right? You don't know much more than that. And so like I was on a path. And then I just fell into student affairs like so many people do. Especially folks that don't understand what student affairs is, right? And so being able to support students in their own journey, developmentally, co-curricularly, right, with life stuff. And so I was an active student, and I had a supervisor that said, hey, you should go into student affairs, like go into these master's programs. And so I did move to Colorado with my little red Honda Accord, went to Colorado State for a couple of years, got a job back here in California at UCI, was there for a few years, then went to Cal State University San Marcos for about 3 years, and then Occidental College for 3 years. And so I have this pattern of threes. When I was a consultant at 3 years, I was like, oh my goodness, am I going to change professions? But I didn't. It's been a long time. And then I went to a doc program on organizational leadership. Oh, thank you, Geisce, for putting that in there. University of California, Irvine. Acronyms, right? How we traffic in acronyms and jargon. And then I got a degree in organizational leadership from the University of Laverne, a little small college that fit what I needed. And then I went into consulting and have been able to do it, right? I left higher education in 2007, right before the recession, to become a consultant. And my family was like, what? You left a degree, like you left a job with the title and house and a decent salary and retirement. package and all of those safe things, especially it was working class folks, I think strive to get, and have been like in love with this profession ever since. And I get to work with groups, people, I get to coach, I work mostly with higher ed institutions, but also nonprofits, and can do an hour-long session to multi-month contract on whatever they need to do around change and diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Mhm. Well, thank you for sharing that. And let's start with the easy question, and certainly the one that I think more, some folks are curious about. What's your favorite ice cream flavor, or what's your favorite treat?
Oh my gosh. So Penn State has a creamery, right? Because Penn State University has like a strong agricultural program, and they have this chocolate peanut butter ice cream that you can only buy. So Penn State's ice cream is so high in fat content
Yes, it is.
that it can't be sold at grocery stores. And so you can only buy it on campus, or you can get it shipped to you. And so I'm so appreciative of that one gig that I got at Penn State years ago. It was like 15, 12 years ago, and discovered that creamery. That's my favorite. I can't get it every day. But I love things with peanut butter in it. So yeah.
Very cool. Yes, for the folks, if you ever visit Penn State, you must visit the creamery. The ice cream is absolutely delicious. I was there for my master's, and I absolutely agree. It's too sweet.
Oh, too sweet.
No such thing. So Becky, I'm curious as we get to know more about you and what you do as a consultant, organizational, development, trainer. What are your core values?
Yeah. So I took notes, right? Like I wrote a bunch of notes to this. I would say that, you have these like core values that you're willing to be on the mountaintop for, so to say. And that would be like authenticity, to show up real and authentic and be messy and not know everything and be imperfect, particularly when we've been socialized and we've learned that we're supposed to be perfect. So I really appreciate vulnerability, integrity. Like I come from a family that like what you say better be congruent with your actions, and vice versa. Like, so if you're going to say this, then be this person. If you're going to say that you're going to do this, then do this. Right. And so congruency, integrity means a lot to me. Like, all right, I'm going to believe and trust who you are. If you don't have integrity, it's a hard one to go, to not do. So like equity and social justice, those are really important to me. Like the treatment of people. At the end of the day, I want to make sure that I individually, and I in my work and the work that I do, has people at the end of the day feeling valued, heard, and respected. That's really critical to like who I am and how I do my work, and that. And then recently, pandemic and age, a core value is rest. Like, when do we allow ourselves to rest? Rather than being in this rat race and in the hustle and like these long task lists, and not needing to give ourselves a break. And I want folks out on the screen and people that I work with, like my value is rest, that allows us to replenish and ground ourselves and come back better, right? I think when we don't rest, and I've noticed this for myself and people that I work with, right? We're not aligned with our values. We're not treating people with value, dignity, and respect. We're not listening to people. We're just shorter with our humanity. And so rest has become a huge value of mine. I don't know if I do it well all the time. I'm still a work in progress, but that's really important to me.
Well, for the folks on the call, Becky is a sought after trainer, consultant, facilitator. Becky was our invited keynote speaker at a conference back in February. She was awesome. And Becky, again, has been invited to, speak across, the US. So she is a nationally known, speaker. So again, Becky's reputation is remarkable. So Becky, going back to, I just need to share this with the group. You're a very, very successful student affairs administrator. For the folks on the call, my wife, her favorite supervisor is Becky Martinez.
That's
So Becky, what made you take that leap of faith to go into consulting, to go into training and facilitating? Because you had a good job. You were good at it.
Yeah, I did. And I loved higher education. As a first generation college student, higher education was a door that opened so many other doors. And so I am so thankful for the degrees that I have and the people that I've met and the places that I've been as an administrator. I think lots of student affairs folks do training in some shape or form, right? Whether it is RA training, like so resident assistant training or student activities training or student leader training or, training and, training the staff and, development or like ... all the things that you can do in student affairs or student affairs adjacent. And so I just found kind of a delight for training. And then I got some side gigs from my dear mentors and colleagues. And then I got a degree in organizational leadership, right? And I was doing some more training. I was paying attention to what we were learning theoretically around coaching and facilitating and working with groups and teams and organizations. So I feel like it was like a constellation. And then I remember in October, I left student affairs in April of 2007. And in October of 2006, I emailed consultant friends and I said, give me the good, bad, and ugly around consulting. And they did a pretty good job. I don't think that they told me all the truths. And so they said, here are the things that I love about it. Here are the things that are challenging about it. And here are the things to consider. And then I just decided to just leap right before the recession, which was like, oh my goodness. And I was in a doc program still. So I, if I had to rewind it and talk to my younger self, I'd be like, so younger self, when was this right for you? And the universe makes no mistakes. And then, so then I just leapt and honestly, in the beginning, it was like rocky and fruitful. We were in a recession. I was just starting. I remember there was a moment where I was job searching and I had an offer. And I'm on the phone with my mentor and I'm in tears because I was like, do I take this guaranteed job with this salary or do I continue to consult? And he didn't tell me what to do, but he asked me some very deep questions and I decided to stay the path. And I love it. Like, I love my work. I am privileged in this space that I get to do what I love. It's not always easy, but it fills my soul.
So being a consultant, essentially, you're always looking for the next opportunity, right, to do a training. So you're your own boss. You decide what you want to do. But again, it's not completely steady, right?
No.
The 12 months. So for some of the folks on the call that are looking at, maybe being their own boss as a consultant, as a trainer, facilitator, what would you like to share with them before they sort of consider that as an option?
And there's, you could be a consultant within an organization and then you have you have that steady stream of income and benefits and safety. So, that is one route in consultancy. And the last few years, we've seen more organizations, a few in higher ed, that have like internal OD consultants. And then there are folks like me and most of my really good friends that do consultancy that are like self-employed or have their own firm or consultancy. we're set up in different ways. I didn't know this, right? You can consult under your social security number, under as an LLC, as a small corporation. It took me a while to know all those things, and I have a great tax accountant. And I would say if you're wanting to consult, find what you're passionate in. Know that there's some business components that I'm still learning after 15 years. Get you a group of people who can support you so that they can help market you. Do some things for free. Make sure that it's something that you really like. Know that there are really joyous parts of it. I don't have to deal with bureaucracy or red tape, right? I don't have anybody to answer to. Sometimes I also don't want to do any work, and I lack motivation to write more website content, or like get the next gig or market myself in critical ways. And so like find friends that will remind you of the things that you do, or hire people that will remind you of things you do, or that will do things for you. And then find your niche. You know, I have talked with more people lately around wanting to be a consultant. And a lot of them are running away from something rather running to something. And that's what I always tell them, like, what are you running? Are you running away, or are you running to? And then like, make sure that there's something that you do that not many other people do, whether it is a skill or a competency or a particular topical area. And that is advice that was given to me, like, find your niche and then just be really good in your niche.
Well, you know, let me just share with the group this, you know, the niche. So Becky, there's no doubt you are amazingly talented, you know, in building capacity for equity through a social justice lens. So that is, you know, your area, and you've done a lot of amazing work. Tell us more about this. Again, you found a space. This is your niche, and again, folks love you. So tell us about how you sort of came to this, you know, discovery, and what keeps you going.
Yeah. Well, I there's like, it circles back to those core values, right? And so my work is based in my core values, and I think that that's really important for lots of people, because it is something that you want to do. Like, you want to wake up in the morning and then you want to do that, and so, you know, find what's important to you and do that, and learn about it. Like, you gotta learn concepts and have knowledge. Some of the feedback that I get back from folks, right? So it's feedback, is that like, I can ask really hard questions, but with a really caring energy. So there's not a lot of judgment. There might be judgment in my head, but I guess that doesn't come out. But like, I can hold the complexity of multiple spaces. And what I mean by that is, like, I can be excited and scared and have those be part of how I show up. Like, I really try to get out of this good, bad, either or, this or that, yes or no space. And I've been taught by some just amazing people that show up in those spaces, like the complexity of identity, of equity work, of human work. Like, humans are complex, and I approach it in that way, right? Whether it is, again, a 1-hour workshop or a 2-day training session, I don't expect people to show up perfect, because I don't want to put that pressure on myself. And so being able to hold complexity is really critical. Yeah.
So I, you know, I'm curious, and I'm sure some of the folks on the call are curious as well. So can you share with us, what does a training look like when you're the trainer? I know there's so many different variations, right? A 2-hour training, a half-day training, a weekend training. So what do you do when you're doing that training?
Yeah. So I think that the pre-work is making sure from the client, like, what is it that you want? What are the outcomes or the intentions of the training? Because then I will develop the curriculum based on that.
Mhm.
And while I could use the same slides for 2 different trainings, okay, so same slides, but it is how am I like talking about concepts related to the intentions for these 2 different groups or organizations. So, so pre-work.
Mhm.
And because I've been in this for a while now, I don't put in as much time in the beginning. I would like meticulous notes and make sure everything, like I had all of the information written because I didn't know it yet. Now I know it. So it sits in my body. I don't have to develop it the same way, unless it's a new topical area. So like that's the pre-work. And then as far as the training goes, it is grounding myself, making sure I'm prepared, leaving it up to, I do a little mantra usually the night before in a prayer of like, let me be the trainer that the group needs me to be. And so that helps me detach from what I want it to be, and really then feeling what does the group need to do? I have a flow. I don't do an agenda, like 15 minutes for this and 12 minutes for this, especially with this kind of work, because somebody may ask a question, or there may be a moment, or somebody shares something or asks, like, or shows emotion or gets mad or whatever it may be. And I don't want to be like, well, we only have 7 minutes left for this, so we better like get through it. That will not be successful. That is not my successful approach. My approach is, okay, here's the container. Here's the intentions. There are multiple ways to get there. And how do I work dynamics in the moment? And that is, I believe that is a facilitator skill, not necessarily a trainer. Like trainer can be more conceptual. Here are concepts. I'm going to show you how to do an activity. A facilitator is like, let me show you how to do this activity in the moment as you're doing it, or let me facilitate that question or that tension that's existing in the group. And so again, I learned about facilitation, but I think experiential learning has been like, I cognitively learned about it, but experience has given me some wisdom. And then watching people train and facilitate has also added to that. And then when I'm done, I really try not to carry it with me. Because sometimes people say some heavy stuff, right? They've experienced trauma. Sometimes people will say just some messy shit. And I'm like, oh, that's problematic. Or sometimes my identities will be targeted, not directly, but like when they'll like, my marginalized identities can be targeted. I think I have done a good job of like being able to release that and not take that with me, like not let it wear me down or have me worry. I've done it a couple of times with some clients if it doesn't go well, but really not, I think similar to therapists, it's like you really took on a heavy content for an hour. How do you not let that impact you? And you learn these skills like of being able to let go. Yeah.
Wow. No, I just want to show the group, we invited Becky to do a training with a board, the ACA board last year. And Becky was amazing. We all loved her training. We all got a lot from it. And again, it was just a matter of 2 hours, and it was a difference maker. So Becky, definitely you have left some profound impact from the training.
Awesome.
So Becky, you're quite involved with other associations and organizations. So the big one, of course, is SJTI, the Social Justice Training Institute. You are one of the faculty with SJTI. Tell us more about SJTI and what you do.
My goodness. Yeah. And you're going to have to watch me on time for this one, because I could talk about SJTI for the rest of the half an hour. So it's the Social Justice Training Institute. It was founded in 2008. I'm in this like interim next gen faculty. So I've been with the Institute, not in 2008, in 1998 it was founded. In 2008 is when I joined the faculty. And like I say this for all the students and all the people on this screen, it started as an idea with 4 friends that were consultants or worked in student affairs that went to some national conferences. And they actually started training on, at that point in time, it was just lesbian and gay, right? Like the top, like equity or social justice or diversity around people who identified as L or G, and that is it. And they became kind of known in the student affairs profession for this work. And so probably for like about a year, but particularly just one day, they sat and they had dinner at one of these conferences and they said, what happens if we do this idea? We do this thing called SJTI. We give back to the profession. And that is really why they started it, is to give back. They were noticing in grad programs that people were not getting the practical skills to engage. And they weren't talking about, like they were talking in a very theoretical model, but there was a gap. And so it was an idea of 4 friends. And they put it on once and it was a shit show, as they would say. And then they decided after that to do race immersion. So it is a 5-day institute that is a real-time laboratory of development. 3 days are just working race and racism, because what the goal is in this laboratory is to see how the individual, group, and system dynamics of race and racism show up, right? How people act, what they've learned, how it shows up in their organization. And then we take that learning to apply it, right? To have a meaning making of, okay, so what about around gender, or around religion, or around age? A lot of people that go through it call it transformational. And what it does, I think the beauty of it is the facilitators have done a lot of self work to show up vulnerable and to not distance themselves from the audience, right? As like we really show up as participant facilitator. And so we are in it also. It's not that, like, we hold some expertise, but so do people in the room. They hold their own wisdom of their life. And it allows people to like show up in all kinds of real, joyous, painful ways. What it does often is it hits like the emotional piece. So if you like get into the theory of like transformative learning, what they say is you have to have emotion attached to it to transform something of how you see things, or the meaning that you make. And and that's what it does. Like it is transformative learning in the moment.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a small cohort, like anywhere from like 40 to 48. So it makes it small and intimate. It is not a big conference.
Mm-hmm. So for somebody who's interested in being a participant of this 5-day training, they just go to the website and select.
Yeah, so there's 2 different ones. There's one for like faculty and professional staff. And sometimes master's level students, like graduate students and doc students. And then we also have one for students, so student SJTI. Mm-hmm. That happens about every 2 to 3 years. The pandemic again has thrown us off. Mm-hmm. The professional one, right, is usually in Long Beach, and then we're gonna do we're gonna change locations. It used to be in Massachusetts, Springfield, Massachusetts, but it's really hard to fly there from the West Coast, and there's not as many flight options. So we're changing location, but those will always be in the same place. Mm-hmm. And then the student one is campus sponsored. So it travels from campus to campus, depending upon who wants to do it. So we've had it like at University of San Francisco. We've had it at Ohio State, University of Vermont. So Colorado State, so different institutions will sponsor it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. And the student one is 4 days, and it is across identities, whereas the professional one is 5 days and it is a race immersion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So Becky, you mentioned your identities, and certainly, I love to delve further into your identities. So again, when you started in 2007, I'm sure there weren't a lot of people that looked like you. So tell us more about the last 15 years. Who do you see now, sort of, in this space doing the trainings? But again, just for the record, Becky Martinez is the one who started it all, because there are folks who are following in your footsteps, Becky.
Yeah, that's humbling. It's humbling. I want to make sure I don't get overwhelmed by it. Yeah, I would say that when we still think of DE&I work, it is in a monoracial Black-white lens. It has shifted a little bit. So we're seeing some different trainers and facilitators that are outside of that. And so as a mixed race person, right, somebody who's like Mexican, Filipina, and Spanish, there's not a lot of mixed race folks out there. There's some more, and we're here and there. And I just had a day-long dreaming retreat yesterday with a good friend who's Latino, and he and I talked about needing to, like, how do we exist as people who don't fit in a Black and white binary doing this work? Like, what is the stuff that we have to pay attention to in regards to anti-Blackness or anti-Indigenous, right? Or just not, like, what are our own implicit biases and gaps? So I don't think I've really seen mixed race folks. There are mixed race folks that are younger than me, which is awesome, because they come to me and they're like, thanks for doing this work. I don't have a mixed race mentor yet. That kind of makes me sad sometimes. And I've got amazing mentors. I also pay attention to other identities, and thank you for asking me about that. So I could just spend time in my marginalized identities, right? As a mixed race person, as a cisgender woman, as somebody who grew up working class or poor. And I know that I don't have a lot of marginalized identities anymore, as now I'm, solidly middle-aged. I have multiple degrees. Some of my identities are very fluid, right? So I am not the same identities that I was when I was birthed, right? Or when I was a second year student, right? So like things change and some things don't change. And that's the beauty of identity work, which I think can be really confusing for folks, right? So I said, like, the complexity, like, how do we even hold complexity of identity, and knowing that there's some fluidity to that. That is like it, it's like nature is always changing. We are not smarter than nature. Nature will outlast us. I mean, it gave us a pandemic that it almost like knocked all of us off, right? And so even like the things that we can learn from nature's lessons are really important. But as I think of identity, like, how do we pay attention in our work and in our spaces and in the classroom of who we are and how we show up? Right? What healing do we have to do? How can we be a voice for? How do we collaborate with? How do we create relationships within our groups and across our groups? I mean, now I'm going on all kinds of different paths rather than the original question, but I don't even know what the original question was anymore.
No, your identities shaped you and certainly, led you to where you are today. And again, you're having a lasting impact. So talk about impact for the folks on the call. Becky is also an author.
I am.
So tell us more about the book, Straddling Class in the Academy, and I'm going to put it in the chat. So tell us about this book.
Oh my goodness. I love this book. It is one of my, it is something that gives me joy and I'm so proud of. What it is it's a published, book more towards the academy, as you can tell from the title, and it is co-authored by a good friend of mine who is a professor at Clemson, Dr. Sanja Ardwan. And it talks about class. It talks about class from the framework of people who grew up poor, working class, whose class has changed as a result of higher education. And so we are in this place of straddling, right? We grew up, in a particular class of origin, and now we're existing in a different class. And we see this all the time on college campuses. So it is a lived experience, and it's something that I've noticed throughout the years in doing my work, this class identity. And there's not a lot of written on class, and class is so much more than money. Like, that is what the book really brings about, is it's not just what you own and what you get paid and what's in your retirement account. It is how you're perceived, but it is also, like, I mean, we were talking earlier, like social capital, who you know and who knows you, what information you know, what's your academic capital, what is your linguistic capital. Like, there's so many different forms of capital, and that's what the book highlights, right? Because like at college campuses, it's really like FAFSA. Like, what is your financial aid package? Are you Pell Grant eligible? Do you get scholarships? Do you get grants? Are you at a community college? And this is what your price point is. Like, all of those things, really important to pay attention to. And it is not just that. And that is like, these stories come to life. So we put some content in the front around the theories or the models that we work from. We've given some definitions to these different forms of capital. We do these stories, we do a narrative analysis. What are the themes in each chapter? And then at the end, we wrap it up and then give some thoughts around. So this is how you can engage social class on, like, in your life and on your campus, and in your organization. I think that that's the other thing. It's not like the title is about academia, and that is Sanja. Sanja's a tenured faculty member. I'm a past student affairs practitioner. And so that's where our playground is, so to say, like our professional playground. And how does classism show up in nonprofits, right? How does classism show up in government agencies, not just in title and position in office space and who gets a parking lot, but like, how do people feel? How are people treated? Even what's the expectation of the word professional? I often say that I am a first generation college student and a first generation white collar professional. And there are blue collar professionals, because people who know how to, who are plumbers, that's a profession. And they have a skill set, and we need to honor that. And we need to treat them with dignity and respect. And in the system, we don't. Right. And so how do we reframe professionalism? Right? How do we reframe how positions are treated? Because there are people in the behind position titles, whether it is custodian or vice president. They are human and they are people. So I love it's a great book, and it is it's academic enough, right? So that faculty can get behind that. There's some models in there, and there's some definitions, and then it allows me to talk about class. And so I have talked with graduate programs, I've talked on campuses, I've talked with divisions and departments. And so this has been an opening so that we can have social class conversations. Because when I first started consulting around social class specifically about 15 years ago, we weren't talking about it at all in higher education. And it still is talked about this much, but this much is better than this much. And we're seeing it on campuses, right? First gen days, first gen student center, centers.
So here's a if you can sort of fast forward in 10 years, how can we improve social class and race relations? If we're going to get better as a society and address civility, right, as a society, how are we going to get there?
I saw the question around civility. So race work is really heavy right now. We are in a critical moment. Whether it is around politics that's impacting, whether it is directed, anti fill in the blank sentiment and actions. People are being hurt, people are being killed. So how are we clearly engaging like race and racism, and what are the dynamics, and how are we pushing back, and what are we like, how are like we talking about it in real ways? And how then are we also talking about class in real ways? And, we've been in a pandemic, and essential employee, non-essential employee, who has to worry about groceries right now with the inflation and who doesn't. So like those are like real life pieces. And so like we got to vote. I mean, like I think with midterms elections, like we've got to vote. We've got to pay attention to it. I know young folks are just like, why should I do this? And so like, how are we caring about our regional community, like our local and our regional communities? Because the national maybe feel too overwhelming. So like, what's my locus of control, and how can I get involved, and how can I like be a good parent, right? How can I be a good student or a good colleague through like, and when I say good, like authentic, honest, point out dynamics, support each other, willing to be an advocate or an ally, which also means like you may lose some relationships, you may lose some of your capital in spaces, you may feel uncomfortable in your spaces of privilege, and keep on doing your work. And then in your marginalized identities, particularly around race and class, like how am I seeking support? How am I seeing what I need? How am I in connection with my community? Civility, it's a fascinating term. I worked on probably like 15 years ago, I worked on a civility campaign for a campus, and they really like built it out. But it took probably like 3 months for the committee to define what civility was for their campus. And that was 15 years ago, right? And so you fast forward in the last 5 years, sometimes civility can come across as you want me to be quiet, right? And so like you want me to make it okay to be microaggressed, but I need to do it in a calm manner. I need to do it the way that you can hear it, right? And so I have a love-hate relationship with the term civility. So let's be really clear what that means. Like I can show up as an angry X, Y, and Z, and that's still civil. But like, don't tone me, like, don't, like police tone, and like don't police actions. And like, we want to keep people psychologically safe and secure. And my psychologically safe and secure as a privileged person is different than my psychologically like secure in a marginalized identity. And so if we're really talking about civility, let's dig into that concept. Yeah.
No, thank
and
you.
Healing, like we got to do some healing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I just want to do a quick time check. It's 4:51. So I have 2-3 more questions for you, Becky. And then for the folks on the call, again, please, certainly think about questions you would like to ask Becky. Please, certainly, enter them in the chat to Amy. Amy is going to collect your questions, and we're going to turn it over, for folks to answer, to ask Becky questions at around 5 o'clock. So Becky, specifically, in terms of being a social justice advocate, what would be the top 3, 4, 5 tips for someone who wants to, again, be a strong advocate for social justice and just, being a part of the conversation instead of being sidelined?
Do your self-work. Otherwise we can cause more trauma. Right? And so like, do your self-work, increase your self-awareness. And when I say that, increase your self-awareness, not only in regards to your story and your individual identities, but all our individual experiences, I should say, but self-work in regards to like the groups that you belong to from a social group membership space: race, gender, social class, age, nationality, religion, sexuality, disability, parental status, geography, like, ... And so it is, how do I show up as and then fill in, like, how do I show up as a cisgender woman? What have I learned as a mixed race person? Like what biases do I hold as a non-disabled person? Like, I learned some stuff. I learned to invisibilize folks with disabilities, right? Or disabled people. You know, because when you're little, your parents tell you not to stare, right? Or you don't stare at homeless people or people who are experiencing homelessness. So this whole population becomes like invisible. And then I carry that with me, right? And so do work in your group identity space, because that is also linked into systems of oppression, right? And in a lot of my groups, the system works for me. Like, my norms are there, values are there, right? I'm expected to be competent and skilled. It is like the air I breathe, you know. And then there are a few identities in which I am systemically oppressed, right? As a cisgender woman, I have to negotiate fees differently than my male counterparts, right? There are some times where I'm not seen as being a person of color because I'm so like racially ambiguous, and I often get asked, what are you? Right. And so, like, do this self-work. You know, so that's only one thing of a lot of things, right? Understand information, right? Like, do your due diligence around content and knowledge. And we can get that through a book, through a journal article, through a TED Talks, right? Through an hour-and-a-half session today. And so knowledge is really important. And then skills, like, let's develop your capacity. So how to present, how to listen, how to be vulnerable, how to be patient, like, those are skills. How to, like, read a room. Yeah, so those would be the things that I would say if you're going to do social justice, DE&I centered work. Yeah, those are some advice pieces that I'd give you. And know that this work is also really joyous. It is cumbersome and heavy, and it will not. You can't be in it in the long game if it's just doom and gloom, right? And so, like, celebrate joyous memories. You can laugh in it, right? Like, some people are like, why are you having such a good time with this? Like, we're talking about racism. And it's like, gosh, I've got to be able to laugh, not at racism, but like laugh at the bullshit that racism holds, because it's so ridiculous. And I can't have it be doom or gloom, or I am not going to be of service in this work the way that I can be. And I'm not going to be the version of Becky that I want to be in the world. Yeah.
So Becky, most folks don't know this, but your first and last, the letter of your first and last name is lowercase. Can you tell us more about your intentional decision behind that?
That's a great question. And I've been doing it now for a while, so it's very much in my space. I have it all in lowercase as a way of my own agency, being able to represent myself, like my name, to it be visually how I want it to be, as opposed to what fits in this like formal structure of grammar or how we're supposed to write. So it gives me agency. It's a statement, right? That I don't have to fall into this construct of what is like formal writing, which has been developed, right, by elite groups. And I, if I, like, my ancestors weren't part of those elite groups. So there's a statement piece to it. I love Bell Hooks's work also, or how she talks about her name, right? Because she does the same thing, and she passed away recently. She talks about, she wants to be, as an author, she wants to be part of the sentence rather than differentiating herself, which is a paradox, right? Because when you write it in lowercase, you are differentiating yourself.
Mhm.
And so I think particularly in a mixed, like in my mixed identities, I feel like oftentimes I'm a paradox.
Mm.
So like the representation of it in lowercase just feels like that's much more who I am in this
Mhm.
paradox space than,
Mhm.
you know, uppercase B and uppercase M.
Mm. Well, thank you for sharing.
Thanks
Again,
for the
again,
question.
it's great again that is how again you are framing, right, your advocacy in this world, and I think that's very powerful.
Yeah, thank you. And here's the thing, people notice it. It's corrected a lot. We had to be very clear with the publishers. Any publication that I do, I have to be very clear about how I want my name represented. And I did some work for a government agency for about 5 years with a couple of colleagues in DC. And the person who brought us in was like, Becky, I understand why you do this. We are a government agency of about 3,000 people that write content for lobbyists. Like we write the data and we do the audits, and that is not going to sit well with our group. Is it okay? Right? And I was like, cool. No. I was like, cool. Because what I said was, because they were like, I don't know if they're going to be able to like hear you. And so I was like, okay, at least in our printed work, right? And so in our formal printed work, we had my name be that, but the slide reflected something different, and I would get questioned about it. But like I could hear that around. We want your work to be able to be heard, and it sucks that your name is the reason why it can't be. And I understand the structure, right? And so like, I want to do good work. And I was like, okay, like I can let that go because you and the people that I'm going to work with in this agency know. But yeah, I've been told I shouldn't. I've been questioned why I do. Fascinating, right? And it's like, it's my name. Like I can't do anything else about this publication, but I can do something with my name. It's nobody else's name.
Right.
But the construct, right, of how it should be. Yeah.
Well, this is a great segue for the last question. So Becky, you've done a lot, seriously, so much in the last 15 years, but even your whole lifetime. So you know, let's talk about your legacy. You know, I don't want to use the word pioneer in a odd, strange way, but you're a pioneer. You started this, and again, you're leaving a lot of, you know, amazing impact. So what do you want to be remembered for? What's your legacy that you want to leave?
Yeah, I want to be one of the people, like I want my colleague and I to develop a model around the student development in social class. I want to be known in circles for this is one of the people who was talking about social class and classism in very real and honest ways that have had us shift our organizational policies and practices and norms. So I think from like a topical area of what I want people to know me for, like what would be that thing on my headstone? So like that would be the professional piece. Like I want to be known as one of the social class identity folks. And then, you know, personally, like my legacy is like she treated people with humanity. Yeah. Simple enough. Simple enough.
Wow. I could keep asking, but again, I want to make sure, you know, our audience, you know, get to ask questions as well. So again, you know, thank you for the folks who have already, you know, submitted your questions to Amy. I certainly had a delightful time. Again, you know, I know Becky for more than 20 years, and it's always a delightful to know more about your stories. You know, again, thank you so much, Becky, for sharing, you know, just your journey with us, what you've learned over the years, you know, not just as a trainer, consultant, you know, facilitator, but just overall, you're just the most wonderful human being. I'm just so delighted. Again, you're here to share this space with us. I know that we will have lots of questions, and I will turn it over to Masami.
All right.
Thank you, Ree. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. My name is Masami Yoshida, and I'm the treasurer of the Downtown Associated Student Council and also an ESL student at CCSF. Thank you, Vice Chancellor Lee, for inviting Becky today. And thank you, Becky, for taking time out of your busy schedule and share your stories and experiences with us. We have learned so much from you, from your valuable experiences. I see there are several questions from the audience. And if you have questions, please feel free to enter them to the chat Amy directly, who is helping with our Q&A portion. For the next 70 minutes, I will be facilitating this Q&A portion. I think we are ready to get started. Is that okay, Becky?
Let's do it.
Yes. The first question is, what advice can you give to those who want to take a new career step?
I would say take a couple deep breaths. Right? I think that's what I say almost in anything. Make sure that it's something that you really are passionate about. Know that it doesn't have to be forever.
Mhm.
Right? Find yourself some people that can support you and that believe in you.
Mhm.
Know that there will be resistance from
Mhm.
people who, know in you and believe in
Mhm.
you. And I think that comes from a place of care.
Mhm.
Do it anyways.
Yes.
And give yourself time and patience.
Mm.
Right? Invest in it.
Mhm.
And again, it doesn't have to be the investment for your rest of your life.
Mm.
And so don't be like, I'm going to do this forever, because that may not be true. But hey, I want to do this. I want to try this on. Right. And then you try it on, you're like, this outfit feels really good. I'm going to keep this forever. Right. Or I can wear this outfit until I outgrow it. And so, yeah, that's the advice that I would say. Yeah.
So if it will be difficult, just try a little bit first time.
Yeah. So I think that's the other thing. You don't have to go full-fledged into it. Dip your toe in the water. And so it's like, oh, I want to be a trainer. Awesome. Do a couple workshops. Right. Oh, I want to be a mechanic. Work on a couple cars. Right. And we can get really stuck in the fact that we have to do forever what we have our degrees in. Again, I have a degree in biology. I don't do anything with it. And so be open to different paths.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah,
Thank
it's a good
you.
question.
The next question, while you have changed a lot in your career, what are the things you feel you still the same?
I don't, evidently, I thought I really liked safety and security, but I guess I don't as much as I thought I would. I love asking questions. I've always loved to think and reflect and ask questions that are really meaningful. What are the other ways that I think that I am the same throughout the years? So I did my senior thesis or project was on environmental racism. I talked about in 3 reservations that I live near, how folks, how the government would get paid by organizations information of where people on reservations lived to then pay them money to dump stuff on their land, which eventually became toxic. So I did work on that. My master's thesis was on people who were formerly in gang members that were now in higher education. So I think I had a desire to make things equitable, at least in the knowledge space. And so people knew information and I could be a conduit for that. But I didn't name it that. I was just like, oh, I'm interested in this. But if I rewind, it was like, oh, I really cared about equity. I just didn't have a name for it. Yeah. And I think my laugh is just as obnoxious now as it was back then. Like there are some Becky characteristics that
One of your
that are
character.
just who I am. Like I am just loud by nature, to the behovement of my father. He always said, like, before I was born, he would tell my mom, I don't want one of those loud daughters. And then I was birthed and the universe said, I'm going to give you a loud daughter. And that really serves me in some ways, especially as a woman of color, right? I can be quiet and humble and learn, and I could be loud and humble and learn. Yeah.
That's a very valuable answer. Thank you so much. So the next one is, when you can do it all, what or where is the best place to start when it comes to interrupting white supremacy supremacy, thank you, in leadership and decolonizing higher education?
Oh, I want to know who asked that question so we can talk about it.
I want to know too.
Yeah. So, I mean, my life philosophy, and I just had this conversation yesterday, is, or maybe it was today at a coaching call, like we can't be everything to everybody all of the time. And right. And so not but but like bringing that space together with, and how do I do really good work engaging white supremacy, calling out white supremacy and whiteness and colonization, but again, I have to do my self-work to be able to be clear on how those dynamics play out in myself and in the groups that I belong to and in academia. Decolonizing, right? Like, so we have gotten a really good grasp on how white supremacy exists in organizations and academia, right? Perfection, quantity over quality, you can't mess up, you can't be vulnerable, individuality over community. So there's been a lot of work on whiteness and how to not call out, but how to like name dynamics, like, and we can look at, recruitment, hiring, and retention practices. What is it like? What's the content that that is being taught? How is the syllabi written? How do we grade? I have a good friend who works at a community college in Southern California, and she's just changing her grading system. And she's like, it's really hard. But like, how am I paying attention to racial disparities, which then impact how students can show up and how they can write? And so like, I think that there are some real specifics around whiteness and white supremacy that we have some tangibles on. Decolonization is just like a whole other beast, right? Because this country is so colonized.
Yes.
And some of it is about individuality, but it's like, what is a learning, like what is pedagogy that isn't tied to colonization, right? Like, and pedagogy meaning like how people, like how I'm delivering content and how people learn, like what is my process, like, and that shit is hard, right? It's like we would have to like, and I think we're doing a better job of, I have a friend who got her doctorate, and instead of writing a thesis, right, instead of writing a dissertation, part of her dissertation were videos. Like that's decolonization, right? To be able to allow storytelling and allow it to be like storytelling rather than to be like written law, right? Like we're needing to like write it in that way. Like that's some decolonization stuff, right? How our classrooms are set up. Are they set up in a lecture style? Can we do circles? Is it about community? Is it about individual? How are we centering the lessons from Indigenous folks? And we don't know what those lessons are because we aren't paying attention. So like let's reach out to Indigenous communities. Let's do our own work around anti-Indigenous folks and like really talk about what indigeneity and the lessons and the teachings are. Like that's going to take some time. Like I've been constructed around colonization of how to learn, and we've got to also unlearn it. Yeah, whew, that is a deep question.
Yes, the most difficult question, I think. Okay, thank you so much. So the next one is, how did you find your passion in your job? Could you tell us what kind of consulting people would go to your firm for?
Yeah. So I found a passion for it as I worked in student affairs and I did training, and I liked it. Like it gave me energy. I was good at it. I was comfortable in it. And so, you know, I think related to your first question around careers, right? I was able to practice a little bit. And then I was in a doc program. I was doing more work, and I realized I really like DE&I centered consulting or social justice centered consulting, because there are consultants who do assessment, right? There are consultants who, do stuff around leadership. And I did like, that is, I think one of my things that I did, it was around leadership because that's what I knew. And I do less leadership training. Nowadays in very like direct leadership ways. The other thing for me is I understand why it happens, but I don't understand like why we're still doing it. Why do we have leadership and diversity, like DE&I separate? Because they're so intertwined. And if they're not, they need to be. Like people need to be able to practice the two together. For me, they're like so rooted together. You know how roots are just entangled? Like that is what it is for me. I can't separate those, but a lot of organizations shamefully can. And I don't think that that's, I don't think that that's the right approach, because then we can cause some damage and some harm. Ask the question again, because I lost my path.
The second question is, could you tell us what kind of consulting people would go to your firm for?
Yeah. So most of my clients are within higher education, and it could be student groups. So like student government groups, student activities groups, student leaders, to executive leadership on campuses, to academic affairs and faculty. So the range and all of the kind of different ways. Also nonprofits. And nonprofits that usually do identity or social or justice-based work. I have some clients around that space. So that's usually who seeks me out. For-profit companies aren't seeking me out usually. I've done some for-profit work, but it probably doesn't feel as meaningful to me. Yeah, it's just not my thing. I could probably charge a lot more money. But it just doesn't seem to be in my value system. I've done some work with some big companies, but it's been with a diversity and an inclusion lens. And oftentimes they are so business driven. It is bottom line. It is it's like, okay, where's the room for some ambiguity? Because it's not all just about bottom line money.
So you don't feel comfortable profit organization. You feel comfortable more non-profit organization.
I work for some nonprofits. Yep, I work with some nonprofits. I don't do a lot of for-profit work. I could make a lot more money if I did for-profit work. And I am very much about like, there are some great people, like just really skilled facilitators, and they do for-profit work all the time, and they're good at it. It's just not where I tend to go.
I see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. So if you're a business person and you're like, I want to crack into this for-profit space and I want to shift the culture, do it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
Mhm.
The next one. Oh, a time is coming over, but I will ask you one more question.
Okay.
You mentioned that the pandemic let people have a rest and think about themselves. Could you share how you think the pandemic has changed you?
Oh, yeah. It has made me think about health very differently. It has upped my upped my awareness around if I think about social class. And so, just, those the first year around essential and non-essential employees. And so we still had to have people go to the grocery stores and stock the shelves and get the produce there. And yet those are the ones that, are making less money and were more susceptible to being sick. Or getting sick, right? Because they were around so many people and we didn't understand where this virus is going. So it has helped me pay attention to class in different ways and treatment of people. I mean, honestly, I'm a little like I hold some more anxiety right now than I used to, because what does my own health look like? There's the political tension and parts that come with the pandemic too, which is just kind of gross. And it is really two things that I have just been so grateful around the pandemic is rest, because I wasn't resting as much prior to it. So like, first of all, there was that forced rest, right? For a lot of people, because like I didn't have any work. And so like rest. And then I found this like deep love for nature, because in the beginning I would do a lot of walking and I was spending a lot of time in wildflowers and sitting in like space, because I was like, oh shit, what's going to happen to our world? And I paid attention to trees and leaves and birds and the wind and these flowers, right? So very differently. And so like, I just found this glorious love. I love the moon. I didn't love the moon before the pandemic. I wasn't paying attention to it. The pandemic allowed me to slow down and like notice the good stuff around me. And like, I have tattoos. You can't see them, but like one of my next tattoos is going to be a moon tattoo. Right? Yeah. So the pandemic has gifted me these loves that I didn't know that I had. Yeah.
I agree that I used to don't walk a lot, but I have time to take a walk or see the moon. Me too. I went to the riverside and see the moon in the pandemic time. So that's it's a great time change. Yes.
Right. Yeah. It has taught us the value of slowing down and not having to like go. And there's just this vastness of grounding in space. And I hope that people, me and others, like, I hope you continue to take those walks and look at the moon and, like feel in different ways and notice that you haven't done. I hope you do that in 50 years.
Yes, 50 years.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Becky, again, for your interesting answers and funny stories, and for our audience. And now I'm going to turn it over to Tony, who will facilitate the next portion of our event. Floor is yours, Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Masami, for facilitating the Q&A portion of our event. And thank you again, Becky, for answering some more questions from the audience. and we really appreciate your sharing helpful tips, lessons learned, and sage advice. And I personally loved hearing about your experiences, especially your passion and warmth with which you talked about your job. It's truly inspiring. So my name is Anton Chicherin, and I'm a senator of the Downtown Associated Student Council and an ESL student at CCSF. And now I'm going to facilitate the last portion of our time together, which is to invite you to share some what inspired you today, or what you have learned from Becky. And if you'd like to share, please raise your virtual hand in Zoom, and I will call on you. Yeah. Okay, I see that Mayara has hand up.
Yes.
Hello, Mayara. What would you like to share?
Thank you very much, Anton. You know that I can't just not say anything. Every time I come to the Leadership Fireside Chat, I want to make sure that I express my appreciation for this amazing event. Thank you very much, Geisce, Amy, and everybody that's behind the scene, all the moderators. Thank you very much, Becky, for your inspiring and enlightening and very informative talk. I learned so much from you. And it's great to have, I want to mention something that's been happening to me real quick. I've been reading this book. It's called Leading Gracefully. I remember when in the beginning of the event, you mentioned that one of your core values is the vulnerability, right? And this book tells about this and how the writer overcame some of her fears of becoming a leader, a CEO in a very big company by being vulnerable. She just said, I never been in this position before and I don't know what to do. I'm just gonna tell my team that I don't know and I need their help. I am vulnerable, you know, and they need to understand that everybody's a human being and not everybody knows everything. Right. And it really connects with what you said today here. And I really appreciate being participating in an event that has women as leaders, because we can resonate even more. Right. Because there is so few, I guess, still, you know, so we feel represented and inspired by you, Becky. And we know that, you know, we see you and say, yeah, I want to be like her, you know, I want to be like her one day. And you really, you know, spoke here something that I've been, you know, believing and learning and trying to improve. And I think as a vice president at the C Downtown, I think that this is so much valuable, you know, it's for us as trying, you know, leaders, trying to be leaders, better leaders for students, representing, being their voice. So every event is so much, it is so great and I learned so much. So I just would like to mention how grateful I am. And thank you very much for your time and for being here with us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayara. So we have 1 more minute for one more comment. If anybody want to share something else, you can raise your hand.
Come on, hands, one person.
I'm about to raise it again.
Yeah, here I see a hand. Go on, please.
Thank you. Well, I didn't get to hear everything that you shared because I came in late, but really appreciate the time that you took to be here at City College of San Francisco with us and share your experiences. There were parts of what you were sharing that I connected to or could relate to, and really appreciate that.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. And okay, I would like to ask Becky if you have any final leadership advice that you would like to share with us.
You know what? There is a new book that came out called The Theory of Being. It is by Dr. Sherry Watt and consortium from the University of Iowa. And in leadership, we often get into this space of doing, like we want to do this, we want to do that. And that is important because that's action. But it talks about, right, like being in the doing, right? And for me, it is being in your values. Like being helps us slow down. Like being is like this sense of being is in the doing, but we can get caught up so much in the doing. And so I ask leaders, or I invite leaders to allow yourself to be and figure out what that means for you. Take time in the being so that you can like be more powerful, more authentic, more within your core values. In the space of being and not just doing. That is a way that we can decolonize, right? It's not just about this very long task list and I want to get the next degree and I want to get this job and I'm going to do and I'm going to do what I'm going to do and I don't have boundaries. Leaders, it's okay to have boundaries. I wish I knew that when I was 20 or 22 or 35. Right. And so as leaders, create some boundaries and then allow yourself to be. Those would be the two things. And then, and then go look at the moon. Yeah, right. Because nature is so much bigger than us. Like pay attention. Let's pay attention to nature. There's what's called biomimicry. Look it up, Google it, because it connects what we can learn from nature and how we can implement strategies in organizations. Right. So those are the three things. Thank you for that question.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, I agree with you that sometimes we just need to stop and to think and try to feel what's inside us. Thank you so much. We're at the end of our time together. So thank you to everybody who joined today's Leadership Fireside Chat. It was truly an insightful learning opportunity. So, and again, a very special thank you to Becky for joining us today for this very special Leadership Fireside Chat. And we're truly inspired by you and your stories and are honored to have you among our notable guests.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, again, thank you, Becky. Again, I want to thank the student facilitators, Timon, Chloe, Masami, and Anton. Thank you so much. You guys did a great job. Again, thank you to Amy behind the scenes and Ann Frontanella, all the students, leaders. We are just so delighted to continue to be able to have wonderful speakers. So I just want to, again, Becky, thank you so much. In terms of the plug for the next speaker, we have a hospital CEO, Raymond Hino. He is going to be our next speaker. He is a very seasoned hospital CEO. He has over 25 years of being a hospital CEO. So he's going to be joining us next month. So hopefully you can join us as well. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend. Becky, you're the best.
Yeah, thank you. Take care of yourselves. Be well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.